senators are demanding action from the Trump administration in the face of Gaza's starvation crisis. They're calling for the U.S. to stop funding the Israeli-backed humanitarian foundation, which delivers food to Gaza. The UN says more than 1,000 people have been killed by Israeli forces trying to get food in Gaza since May, mostly at or near those often chaotic distribution sites. In their letter, the senators write, "There should be no American taxpayer dollars contributing to this scheme." Joining me now is the very first signatory on that letter, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. Senator, thank you for being with us. How much money is the U.S. spending on this, and why is it, do you think, such a bad investment?
Well, Chris, it's $15 million and potentially rising. And this is a bad investment because it's contributing to the starvation of people in Gaza. As we speak, families are dying of starvation, kids are dying of starvation. What happened was months ago, the Netanyahu government imposed a complete blockade on all food and humanitarian supplies getting into Gaza. When they ended that blockade and allowed a trickle of aid in, they didn't allow the United Nations humanitarian organizations to resume that aid. They replaced it with this private organization backed by mercenaries and the Israeli Defense Forces that has been used not really to deliver food, but to use food as a weapon of war. So in our letter, we say U.S. taxpayers should not be complicit in what has become a death trap, those scenes of people swarming to get food only to be shot down, and let the UN organizations resume what had been a very difficult situation, but at least people were not starving to death every day.
We had in our last hour, Senator, an expert on. He's the VP of Emergencies and Humanitarian Response, the International Rescue Committee. He says, we know how to do this. One of the things he said that we know not to do, and President Trump said today, he praised these airdrops. But what this expert told us was that it's expensive, it's dangerous. In fact, we've seen in recent days people getting hit by these aid packages coming to the ground. And he said it is one of the least effective ways to feed people. He said, we know how to do this. So in your view, what kind of system using U.S. funding needs to be in place instead?
Well, the expert you interviewed is absolutely right. Airdrops actually are just a little pinprick compared to what is needed. We need a massive influx of food and humanitarian assistance right now. And the answer is actually very straightforward. Go back and allow the UN organizations, reputable organizations, to begin to bring trucks in. We used to have 500 trucks a day coming into Gaza to provide food. Before Netanyahu imposed the total blockade months ago, you had 400 food distribution sites. When they converted it to this very shadowy private entity with mercenaries, they went to just 4 sites. They're really using food as a way to control the population flows to try to actually advance other interests, including, as you've heard from some in the Israeli government, who just want to herd Gazans into a concentrated area and then ultimately push them out of the country. So the answer is very clear. We should go back to the UN organizations who know how to distribute this food and let them feed people in Gaza and stop the starvation.
I should say that President Trump did acknowledge today what Prime Minister Netanyahu won't, that there is real starvation in Gaza. The president said the U.S. is going to set up food centers, although he didn't have any details. And he also talked about what he is looking for right now. Let me play that for you.
We gave $60 million. Nobody said even thank you. Thanks. Somebody should say thank you.
Is there somebody who should be saying thank you for what the U.S. has done?
You know, the United States has been complicit in this whole disaster in Gaza, so nobody should be thanking the U.S. government, least of all Donald Trump. Chris, I don't know what $60 million he's talking about, but I do know that the Trump administration gave $30 million to this organization's so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has become a death trap for people who are desperately seeking food. What the Trump administration needs to do is resume full funding to places like the World Food Program and other organizations. This administration, the Trump administration, actually cut back on the funds we've been providing to those kind of organizations. So the President of the United States has a way to help end the starvation, but he needs to call upon Prime Minister Netanyahu to allow those UN organizations to resume their activities. And of course, as you said, Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't even acknowledge that people are starving to death in Gaza.
And in the meantime, as multiple experts have told us, including people in country right now, the clock is ticking. People are dying, including children, every day. Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you for coming on the program.